All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, still no white lightning for me because I have gone from hangover to withdrawals. So we've got orange Gatorade and a backup of Glacier Freeze Gatorade. Oh, this is miserable.
How long does
But
it take to purge that stuff, do you know?
withdrawals, it depends on how hard you went. I've purged that's the problem with withdrawals is the lack of the chemical in your body. So that's when your body's
Okay.
overreacting to not having it. So
I
that
thought you were still trying to purge the benzos.
no, those would have
Okay.
been gone. Well, technically, if I had a slow metabolism, this would be the last day of it. But they're only detectable up to 3 days. That's why I barely had trace amounts. But since I don't ever use them ever, trace amounts means something.
Right.
And the uh, I typically have a higher metabolism than usual. But no, the effects that were still around Wednesday was probably from the 150 drinks I had after I blacked out.
Woo.
Yeah. Oh. So then the withdrawals are based on that and how long I had been doing it before. So that's we're looking at about 2 weeks of misery here.
Ouch.
But I did find something interesting before we get started. The mystery was how was I remembering things on Saturday about Friday, but
Right.
didn't remember them on Monday. And it got me down a big rabbit hole of the difference between short-term working and long-term memory. And basically, the drug blocks the the transfer from those shorter term memories to your actual long-term memory. And so it's like cramming for a test, but then 2 days later you can't remember anything you studied. And it's similar to that. Not it's different, it's chemically induced, but it's similar to that. And it's just the best analogy I could come up with. That being said, I'm also looking for ways to be able to access those if it's possible.
Hmm.
Uh, but we're going over a Wheel of Time for those that are here for that.
Yes, and on a completely unrelated note, I was pulling up the see if there were any comments, and from episode 211, I forgot the thumbnail of Bookmen, Showmen. Oh, but I love that movie. But yeah, that's not how I see men in my head at all. Which, for those who don't remember, is a really cute chick who I have no idea who she is on one side, Bookman, and then Showman is the old the Chinese landlady from Kung Fu Hustle in her curlers and cigarette dangling out of the corner of her mouth. Okay, so where are we? 228. See. Only one. Yes. This is, I think, purposely fuzzy of on Jordan's part, and I really should pull up that searchable database for every time I say this, but it's too late. I've gone too far. Not all of Matt's memories came from the Finn. His Manetheren memories seem to be more related to his reincarnations, um, which definitely seems to be true. There's also, and it may just be the way he chose to narrate some of them, but those those Manetheren memories do seem to be different. And um, the first big one we see though, that makes me curious, and I may, when we're done, I may go back to Fires of Heaven and see exactly how it's related. Because remember, one of the first big ones we see is when Jason Natil is singing a ballad of Manetheren, which
Mhm.
the Aiel really love because it's a battle thing. But then he starts remembering, yeah, it wasn't quite like that, and he remembers, that the invader was moved by the king's uh, courage and the tenacity of the army, and so he granted them leave to retreat up back across the river. And Matt, who we know, what's interesting about the memories though is that um, he's never the king; he's always the general.
Mhm.
But it does seem like he was the last king of Manetheren. That seems a pretty solid though I believe unconfirmed fan theory.
Yeah, last time
So
we did look that up specifically on Theoryland, Robert Jordan like apparently answered in a way that was like maybe, maybe not.
mhm, yeah, so in that instance, he wasn't the king; he was the general advising the king, "Don't take the deal; it's a trap." And sure enough, once the army was strung out crossing the ford, they attacked again and wiped him
Okay,
out, and he
so let's go
remembered
back a
dying.
few chapters now that we're talking about that. We brought up dreams, and Matt, this is his first connection to dreams. What if those are the bodies that he dreamed about?
Hmm.
We brought up maybe spoilers that he could be dreaming
Yeah,
about, but
I
what
hadn't
if
thought about
those
that.
are the bodies he's dreaming about? What if those are memories from his past lives? And when he started speaking, so you said the first was his was with Asmodean singing. The first was really him screaming out in the old tongue
Yes,
in the
yes.
first book. And notice that Perrin's manifestation of his dream world life and Matt's manifestation of it, which was the past live coming out, and well, we get Rand later, but we kind of don't get a good idea what's going on in his head because he's always in denial about everything. All coincide with Baal Zaman bringing them into the dream world.
Hmm. That's a good point. That's a
Maybe
good
that
point.
maybe that started to fuzz the line. It's why
Well, but
why couldn't Perrin at least think about having an affinity for wolves as he grew up?
we know from both Cadswin and Simmerhaj that um Rand's memories are are also a symptom of the madness that all men go through because the taint breaks down that
Well,
barrier.
I
So,
take it back. That was when Rand was first being able to accidentally channel.
mm,
So all of their respective abilities came out in correspondence with being drawn into the dream world.
well, not Rand's first time was before that though, but it was
Yeah,
certainly
patting Bella. Yeah.
accelerated. It certainly seemed to accelerate uh, after that. Um, anyway, all right, so that's the only comment we have, and this should be I think, a pretty quick one. Because I'm I pulled up my notes and I noticed almost all of the notes I took when I reread this after we finished talking about Crossroads. I pulled out the book to just flip through it and I just read it. Because we when we finished up Crossroads, we were talking about the bittersweetness of it being Jordan's last fully written book, and how much great stuff there is in it. Almost all my notes are Matt chapters, and then I have some Rand notes. I have almost no Perrin notes, just few, and I don't have any Elayne notes. And we're on chapter 12, which is a nice Perrin chapter, but then we go into a big chunk of Elayne chapters that well, there's a good contrast here actually with why we feel like Elayne is a slog. Um and how it could have not been a slog, because this is actually a really good chapter. This is a very good Perrin chapter. Um, in similar vein to what I was talking about with his last chapters in Crossroads, where there was some good stuff there, but then how long the chapter was where they go to buy the grain. I can't remember the name of the place where they go to buy supplies, and that seemed to drag on way longer than it needed to. And that's, to me, that's the contrast between this chapter here, which is tight. There's not much wasted space here. There's not much wasted movement. And then we go to Elayne, which is like 3 or 4 chapters of, all right, yeah, I get the point. Can we move on here?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for instance, one of the scenes that really jumps out in this chapter is when the uh one of the Sanchin scribes, is coughing, and then he gets up and then he falls over and just beetles start pouring out of him.
Well, I think before that the the first good scene is when Perrin kind of just matter of factly tells his story about the Tinkers
Mm.
and Grady is like, oh yeah, maybe so. Okay.
Yeah. So we get a great moment of, it's also sadly setting up something. Uh, we won't go into that until we get there. Uh, but I like that callback because, except for a few times where Aram has been around or where he's thought about him or talked to him, we've kind of missed that link. And one of the first real notes of Perrin's character is when he's among the Tinkers. And it is, ugh, stupid show. I think that's where they 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 pulled this, you know, Perrin as the berserker uh motif from, except it's so sloppy and
Mm-hmm.
ham-fisted, and it's so much more nuanced in the eye of the world that he, because of what they just experienced running from the Trollocs, having to see these things and having to run for their lives from it. There's also already been some of the dreams, so he's already have to deal with that. So this idea that you can go through the world without violence is just silly to Perrin, but not just silly, somewhat infuriating, because he is the protector. That is his archetype. He is
Mm-hmm.
the builder and the protector. And so in some ways it's angering to him because, you know, how dare you not stand up and protect the vulnerable, protect the weak? But on the other hand, he is the gentle giant as well. So he doesn't want to have to be the protector. He'd rather just be the builder.
Mm-hmm.
So that there's that tug of war there.
Well, he'd rather be the protector from sheer intimidation alone. He's the bouncer. He just wants to look big. He just wants to look big and everybody do go about their business. And but rewind just a second. I have a question. I had a question when I was looking back over this. He talks about Shanshan Protocol and he says Talonvor was right. Didn't they get out of Amador before the Shanshan attacked or during the Shanshan
No, it
attack?
was Deering.
So how would they know? Because they were basically running wild after that, and they've never had time
Mm.
with the
No,
Shanshan.
remember, Talonvor leaves to go try and find Morgase on his own. And then when he comes back at the end of Crossroads, he says, I may have found allies that can help us deal with the Shido,
Okay. And
but
so he learned it then.
deal
Okay.
with the devil. And
Yeah.
and he is uh we kind of skipped over this part because we were busy talking about Perrin, but he's the one that made the introduction. He's the one that made the link there. So he's the one who uh when they meet the general, Talivor is the one who makes the introductions because he's the middleman. So it's clear he has already spent some amount of time amongst them and has somehow managed to, you know, get this meeting, to make this meeting happen. So he would be more experienced, not just from what they saw in Amador, but then in his dealings with them to get this meeting and this alliance to happen.
Well, there might be a sense of some that he learned some things the hard way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that as well. Um, well, certainly they learned things the hard way in Amador, and so you would think he would be savvy enough to be cautious, because he does know what they he does know the peril here. Um, all right, where were we?
We just
Oh
got
yeah,
past the
so the oh my final thought there about that scene that you're talking about is um how unintimidated Perrin is and has always been, uh, in part because of his. I think I've used this analogy before, that Perrin is simple, but that doesn't mean he's simplistic.
Mhm.
That his simple, uh, fairly black and white moral code means that he has no problems uh, telling this person, no, you're wrong, in a pretty, you know, firm manner. of yeah, you're wrong. These are who these people really are, and I respect them for that. And then you know scenes are always doing more than one thing with Jordan, and then that uh, prefaces what's about to happen when they go into the manufactory and have to deal with this very high ranking official that um, he's he's not going to back down. He's very simply and directly going to make his case and stand his ground. But we'll get there more when we get there. Okay, but the Beatles.
Well,
Boom, boom, boom.
I want to point out something that's been a trend, and I want to point it out every time I see it. Captain Fallowen and Fallion and Folian and Folian, Falian.
Yeah,
I started calling him Falloon just to make it easy for me to remember.
yeah.
It's not in the
I
pronunciation guide, so I can call him whatever I want.
uh, I can understand it to an extent because he's not Tolkien. He's not an actual linguist, but he is enough of a polymath to uh, to have some understanding of languages and language conventions. So
Yeah, but we had
if
Microsoft
you
Office back then. You just put all the
yes,
names you've used, and when you start thinking of a new one, you
mhm,
put FAL search. Well, there's already 10 people with that beginning.
uh,
Let's at least make the suffix way different than the ones that are there.
yep, yep. So I can understand the similarities, but there are way too many that are way too close. All right.
I would rather have people with the same name and have it be a cultural thing than all of these that are so similar, but you're supposed to be able to tell they're different, even though they're from all these different cultures. You know, if there were 10
mhm,
different mats, but they were all from Andor, okay, that would be easier to keep track of because then you would see the last name or you would automatically look for identifiers.
yeah. Um. Oh. Another thought before we get to back to the Beatles. Um. Page 294 down at the bottom. So this is another instance of why I feel like this is a great Perrin chapter, but also annoying because it shows what could have should have been. So down at the bottom, uh, the uh, the banner general slowed her bay and frowned at the field, blah blah blah, and they should have more rocking than this here. If this is all there are, we take what we can get and go on, he said. So his parent interrupting her. None. If it comes to that, we already know where the Shido are. I like to know if anything is coming up behind me, she told him dryly, picking up the pace again. So the general's not wrong, and as much experience as Perrin has been forced to have for his young age, this is a career soldier who has seen a lot of combat, and so she's not wrong that they need to know they need a better understanding of what's going on here so they don't stumble into something unexpected.
Well, not only that, he's also unfamiliar with the way they use them in battle.
Yes.
You know, yes, they're scouts for a head, but once the battle starts, what do? Oh, they make sure we're not getting flanked or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
etc.
Mm-hmm. So, but Jordan is very simply and quickly showing us Perrin's single-mindedness. This is where his simple code is becoming simplistic because he's so um, obsessively focused on getting Fail back to the detriment of anything else. And so we didn't need all the slog that we got before because he could have done it this way more frequently of here show us what's going on and show us Perrin's um, kind of deterioration into this rigidity that he's developing because he's so obsessively focused on getting Fail back.
Well,
And
I think
now
there's
we
something to be said to piggyback on something you said earlier about him wanting to be the protector and the quiet giant protector
Mhm.
that doesn't want to have to do anything, but he will. That's why he's so clumsy
Mm.
because he's in attack mode. He doesn't know how to do the attack mode.
Hmm. That's a good point. He is acting unnaturally. It's understandable, but it is unnatural because this is not who he usually is. This is not the core of his character. So that's a
This
good
is where
point.
I would
And
have liked
he's
to see more of the wolves
mm,
because he could have gotten a lesson from them too. We don't just rush in.
yes,
We're a pack. We
that's a
guard
good
each other's
point.
back.
That when we do see the wolves, it's early on when he reaches out to them to try and use the wolves to scout and help find Fail, and their response is to mourn the mate you lost, and then you move on because that's just nature. Is all right. You've lost a mate, that hurts, but life goes on. You've got to keep hunting. You've got to keep leading the pack. You find another mate and you move on. So it would have been nice instead of some of the other slog we see to revisit that and expand on it.
Which is funny, the two biggest outside influences in his life, he just wants to hunker down and have a family and build something and not go anywhere and not have adventures. But the two biggest influences in his life are the wolves and the Tuatha. So, but who are nomadic by nature and are
That's
constantly
interesting.
moving.
Yeah, that's I had not thought of that before. There is an interesting and when we first meet the Tuatha, it is so I think they've referenced Tinkers earlier than that, but when we first actually see who they are, it's with the wolves. And I hadn't thought before about um that parallel of like and yet opposite,
Mhm.
and that the wolves don't like the Tinkers.
Well,
And
you know,
but yet
think of the answer the wolves gave him. Now think of if he went and asked a tinker right now,
hmm,
what do I do? They would be like, the way of the leaf. He's
exactly.
gone.
You
Mourn the
just
loss.
you go with the flow. That's
Mhm.
just nature. You go with the flow because that's just nature. That's just how it works. All right. Um,
Okay, Beatles.
Beatles. Right.
Beatles.
So I won't harp on this too long because I already kind of harped on it with the with seeing the dead at the end of Crossroads. But here he uses Perrin to he uses Perrin's nature, his kind of stoicism, to illustrate this phenomenon without dwelling on it. So he's able to just move on quickly because that's who Perrin is. Because Perrin's just going to move on quickly because there is that part of him that is the wolf, the way of the leaf of, all right, well, it is what it is. We can't do anything about it. Let's just move on and be about our business. But also, there is also the part of that that is maybe you should be a little bit more concerned about this parent, but he can't or won't because he is so obsessively focused. So we get an illustration of how the Dark One is corrupting the natural world with
Well, in a
chaos.
theme, yeah, in with the theme that we talked about in Tanchico with vermin.
Mm-hmm.
These beetles tear apart wood, which is organized material, into chaos. And same with the centipedes, same with all the rats and the bugs in Tanchico. And now it's just doing it in a way that is defying physics, defying biology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those kinds of things are supposed to come after a body has died, not be
Yes.
in the body and make it die,
Yeah.
or be there right when the body dies, or however supernatural thing that came about. So it's it's using nature, but in a corrupted fashion,
You know what? How
which I
much do you
find
think this
interesting.
relates to like bubbles of evil? You think this might have been a mini bubble of evil? Like instead
Yeah,
of big blops coming up now, it's like a rolling boil. So it's like,
but also more focused. The bubbles of evil we've seen before have just been weird, kind of random strangeness.
mhm.
This is much more.
It's almost like it's attacking individual threads now, because that person would be an individual
Oh,
thread of the
I
pattern.
Okay, here's thought just came to my brain of maybe a better way to think about it is that they're becoming more focused as an extension of the Dark One's essence, because the Dark One is entropy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're seeing here. It's not just random chaos, but it is more, it's carrying more of his essence, which is the unraveling of nature, the unraveling of the weave of the world, of accelerating that move to entropy is basically what the Dark One wants to do. He wants to hurry up and get to the end of the universe.
Dun dun dun.
Um, oh, we all then we have this little event here where someone takes a shot at Perrin.
Yeah,
Um,
you don't want to address the fork root first?
what about it?
Well, just the fact that oh my gosh, the Shanshan are farming fork root now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal.
Oh, you know what? I can't remember where this is, but I think there's this tiny little nugget somewhere, and I don't remember which book it's in, that this is all Elida's fault because she was so uh outraged. She was so temperamental when the Makura woman failed to get
Mm.
Nynaeve to get Elayne.
And she had her punished horribly.
She had her
Yeah.
punished severely. Well, there's a little nugget buried somewhere that she went to the Sanshin with this.
Didn't Suroth bring her to her?
No, so yeah, she somehow eventually got to Suroth with this information, but the Sanshin didn't find out about her and then bring her to tell them about the fork root. She went to them, and it's not said, but it's
Doesn't they like
I
show her
think it's
going into one of their cities or something?
I don't remember exactly where you see it. I would have to go
Yeah,
dig around to find that. Maybe Scott remembers, or maybe we can find it later.
on
But
the wiki. Yeah.
yeah, she goes to the Sanshin. So they're they're manufacturing the stuff because Alido is a queen bee.
Hmm.
Because Elida is a queen bee and lashed out at this woman, you know, with with severe punishment that wasn't warranted, frankly. And this is her payback. This is okay. I'm gonna help the Sanshin uh uh incapacitate and collar channelers, including Aes Sedai, who might be hidden and sneaking around. So this is her payback. And the Sanshin just take it to a whole nother level. They see this and go, oh, hello, let's you know let's go all in on this and make this a major, a major component of our effort, of our war effort here.
Yeah, we've only seen bits and pieces of them catching what they call Marath Daman, but uh you don't see, you have to imagine that the ones we didn't see, there's always some sort of there's cross casualties.
Mm.
You know, if they caught, it would be more like this is something the show probably got right when that yellow was fighting for her life with all the
Mm-hmm.
Soldem and Demon around her. So
Yeah. All right. So I
see, I
think
can give credit when it's due.
it's just very rarely
That was
due in
actually
that
one of the
sense.
better scenes of the whole.
Yeah. Mhm. Um. All right. So then someone takes a shot at Perrin. Uh.
Shooting their shots.
It's insinuated here, and I think Perrin assumes that this is Masama taking a shot at him. Uh. Do we think that's actually the case, or could it be that it's someone else? It makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, Perrin assumes it's Masama. I'm putting this for spoilers because we might have to talk about other options. Okay, so we'll save that one for spoilers because I think any other options might be something that we see in the future.
Yeah. All right. All right, so they get what they need from this guy, the rockin' and carts and everything, but then they have to go to get the actual fork root from the manufactory, and this is where Perrin's it up. Um, which kind of culminates on page 305, where um General Tiley has told him uh this is someone who is going to be very full of herself, and not wrongly so, because she does carry a tremendous amount of authority. Um, but we don't
Okay,
find out
okay, that's
exactly
why
what
I
that
stopped
means
you because
until
you are
after.
going out of order.
Oh, I
No,
thought when they
he goes to the lady for the fork
oh,
route
and then it
before
takes
the.
the shot of
Yeah, that's why I was bringing us back.
I thought it was in between.
Nope, nope, nope.
Okay, okay. There's where I was. All right, I got it. I got
I was
discombobulated.
like, didn't they go right to an inn?
Yeah, no,
So
yeah, I was thinking they go and they get the reckon in the carts, and then when they're going out of there, that's when someone takes a shot at them, and then they go to the manufactory. I forgot that it was after the manufactory.
I'm supposed to be the one that just had my brain damaged.
I'm born brain damaged. All right.
Your
Um,
has the shell on it.
so down at the bottom, it's great that we get Perrin's actual thought process here, so that um it's not completely he doesn't act on instinct. He is instinctual in ways at times, that's where the wolf part comes in, but he's not nearly as instinctual as Matt is. The Perrin is the thinker. I think the best scene of the three boys and their personalities is in The Great Hunt, at near the beginning, when they're with the Shienarans tracking, and uh Rand kind of sneaks off and he finds the dragon banner, and Matt and Perrin come in, and Matt's all, yeah, yeah, you think you're better than us, and you have your own banner now, and blah blah blah. And Perrin's just kind of squats down, looking at the banner, looking at Rand, and thinking. And then he's the one who says, "Can you channel? Are what's going on here?" So he's kind of the one who thinks it through and figures it out. And we see that here with Tylee is trying to navigate the bureaucracy and the egos and everything else that goes along with this situation. And Perrin just cuts in. Um, Plainly, this was a touchy encounter, and he tried to keep his face smooth, but he could not avoid a frown. He could not be certain that even near 5 tons of the stuff would be sufficient, and she was trying to negotiate some lesser weight. His mind raced, trying to find a way. Fast thought was shoddy thought in his estimation. It led to mistakes and accidents. Measure twice, cut once. Uh, but he had no choice. So here we have an interesting combination of him thinking, but he doesn't have the time to think in the way he would want to. So this is where the instinct kicks in much the same way that we saw when when he meets Queen What's Her Face, and is just completely disarms her by just being himself,
Hmm.
so that she swears fealty to him. This may not interest the honorable, of course, but Sarath promised death and worse if there was any hindrance to her plans. I don't suppose her anger will go beyond you and me, but she did say to take it all. Um, and you have a little bit of Tavarin luck there, but then also a little bit of Perrin just being Perrin, because it turns out you called Suroth Suroth, and he has no idea what a big effing deal that is. And that's ultimately what turns the bureaucrat around. And I love the way Tylee explains it. Um, so halfway down on the next page, 306. Well, nobody wants to chance death, Perrin said. You didn't know, the dark woman breathed. That woman knew she stood in the shadow of death as soon as she read Suroth's words, but she was ready to risk it due to her duty to the Empire. A lesser hand of the third rank has standing enough that she might well escape death on the plea of duty done. But you use Suroth's name. That's all right most of the time, except when addressing the High Lady herself, of course. But with a lesser hand, using her name without her title meant you were either an ignorant local or an intimate of Suroth herself. The light favored you, and she decided you were an intimate.
Well, the lady seems like a lady of calculations, and when you have probabilities, what's the probability of a local having that
Mm-hmm.
letter to begin with?
Mm-hmm. And
Okay,
just being a yeah, just being an ignorant local.
okay, so what's the probability of him having that letter, and then you don't add the probability of him using her name alone, you multiply.
Mm-hmm.
And so the probability has got to 1 in a million or something in her head, and she's like, "Oof, it's 999,999 to one that I'm going to be dead. So let's go with the numbers here."
Well, not just, but what's interesting to me is kind of the subtext here, and I haven't really thought of before, is that it's it's not that the lesser hand fears death as much as she fears being wrong. So she could maybe escape death, as Tylee says, by pleading duty. But what I think is going on in her mind is that I would be wrong and I would be judged to have failed in my duty. So it's not the death itself that scares her. It's the thought that I will be judged to have failed my duty. And that is everything to these people. Ugh.
Speaking of vermin, there was a fruit fly in my drink, and it is way too late in the year for that. So to figure that
Yeah,
one out.
it warmed up a little bit here last week. And so my greenhouse is just chock full of giant fat black flies that I hope die now that we've got another cold front coming in here.
Mm.
Um, all right, any thoughts on that before we have to move on to chapter 13 and Elayne?
I want to know the answer to the question that got him to turn away from the arrow, but we never get it because the arrow
Oh, that's a good
happens.
point. All right, let's see. Where I'm looking back to remind myself what it was.
Oh, tell me, she said,
Where are
uh,
you?
Kylie says, tell me if the question does not offend you. Did your lady bring powerful connections or perhaps great lands? The
Both.
answer, the answer is yes, but that's not why he's with her. But you can imply by the way she asks it that she's asking if he's a savvy nobleman that she didn't think he was at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That
But he got out of jail free card by being shot.
yeah, we know the answer is yes, both. But how would Perrin have answered it, and why was Tylee
I
asking it?
I think he would have given an angry answer there, he would call a
Yeah,
rash answer.
I don't care. It's my wife. That's what matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's are you are you insinuating that I'm trying to rescue her because of politics? What
Which
is?
which realistically, in a lot of these situations, that would be the least reason to rescue her
Mhm.
because then you would have it all.
Yeah, uh, that surprised him so much that he twisted in his saddle to stare at her. Um, to me, the more interesting thing is why it surprised him so much. I don't know if it's because it's out of the blue, that she suddenly brings up Fail, and he's what you know. But why do you bring her up? Why do you ask that question? What? But to me, the more interesting thing is that it surprised him so much that he had to turn sharply.
Yeah, I think it's not hard to see that because of his character. That's the last reason he married Fail. In fact,
Yep,
he didn't even know that about her till
he
he
didn't
was.
want to when he found out.
Yeah, exactly. And so that would be something I could see offending him, even though, and usually a statement that says, if tell me if the question does not offend, means you're going
Yeah.
to say something that could be very offensive. It's like I'm not racist, but it's,
Hmm.
the next words out of their mouth is going to be something highly offensive.
Hmm.
So it was, I think that's I understand where Jordan was coming from with that, but I think he could have put one more sentence in Perrin's mind, like, wait, what?
Hmm.
That's the last
Hmm.
reason. So he turned so fast that, yeah, I'm not as good a writer. He could have done it better, but something that says that he actually was offended.
Yep. All right. I guess we better stop procrastinating and move on to chapter 13 now.
Yeah. And it
What
already
do
gets too
we?
annoying because she's in the front lines
Mhm.
from the get-go.
Which that's not the annoying part, really, because that makes sense. All right, that you would be there, both so that you don't have to rely on a report of what happened. You can see it with your own eyes, but then also, uh, so if I don't remember which there were, I think it was one with Kate Blanchett as Elizabeth, and I don't remember the title. And towards the end when the Spanish Armada is coming, there's this scene where she's um, rousing the troops that are camped out on the southern part of England in case the navy fails and the Armada comes through and starts landing its troops. And she's decked out in armor, and that's actually historically accurate. That she had a suit of armor. I think it may have just been a breastplate, ornately done, but it was all for show. She she never actually went into battle. She had never had an intention of going into battle. Um, but it was important to her and to her people that she be there and be seen to personally raise their morale so that because
The
that's
problem
the
is we already
symbol.
had this scene done better
Yes.
with Perrin tying himself to his horse so he could be out there when the Two Rivers folk were fighting.
Which actually is, maybe part of the point here is the sharp contrast between that and this, that Perrin wanted to be and should have been on the front lines, but he couldn't because he was still recovering from a very severe injury. She shouldn't
Yet
be
another
there.
arrow through him. He
Mhm.
attracts these arrows.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh, she shouldn't be there because you're not a warrior. Uh, you're pregnant, for crying out loud. And you are the target because the whole point here is a battle of succession. So if if they see her, they know, oh, we take her out, this is over. That's the whole point of this, is to take her out. Um, and so there is a contrast there too between Perrin grudgingly accepting his duty, which is I can't fight, but I need to be seen, and her literally pushing against her bodyguards and them having to, you know, tighten up to keep her from going forward. They don't, or maybe you say can't physically restrain the queen, so they're just getting in the way. And they have to do that because she's so stupidly hot-headed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And where this becomes a slog is you get the voice of reason from both Avienda and Birgitti
mm-hmm,
for the 100th time.
mm-hmm,
That's where, I mean, if this was the only instance, this isn't the first, and this won't be the last for the next
yeah,
several books.
yeah,
That's where it becomes annoying. If it was just this scene, I would probably judge it differently.
yeah. Um, my only real takeaway from this chapter is Jordan's real grasp of real history here. Um, and something I mentioned. Wait, were we recording when I mentioned this about that first interview on that page on the wiki that I brought up, and he talks about the journalist asks him how did your experience as a combat veteran affect the way you write war and battles, and because I'm a giant dork, I can see where he is drawing influences from actual historical battles and um, the way medieval style warfare played out. but his point is that to him, it seems the way he answers the question, that's incidental. That's secondary. To him, where it comes through the most is actually, and why he's so great at writing, it's actually in the characters. It's the way it's the way someone who has been in and knows what battle is thinks about it and reacts to it. And you see that from the very beginning with the way Tam treats the sword. And then it escalates. You see it even more in his fever dream when he starts talking about the blood snows and the way he talks about it. The way he feels about it. And so you get that in this chapter um, with the mercenaries, with Elayne angrily and frankly rather stupidly saying, "You shoot them in the back when they run away." The mercenaries are hesitant to do that for two reasons. One, as he says, it might be you next time,
Mm-hmm.
and you, Elayne, don't understand that because you're a spoiled brat, and because, as I said, you're not a warrior. You haven't been through this. But there's another reason too that's kind of subtext that I pick up because I'm a dork, and I think it's there on purpose, which is um, sieges, both through the medieval and then into the gunpowder era, were a very nasty business, and there was this razor's edge that you were walking as the defender of, can we hold out and win? The longer we hold out, the more likely it is the other side suffers disease, is attacked by a reinforcing army, just has enough casualties, loses will, and just leaves. On the other hand, it's pretty damn well documented, and this was especially true in the 30 Years' War, which was really nasty, that the longer a siege went on, the worse the consequences were if the city fell, because there would be an absolute orgy of rape and death and murder
Mm-hmm.
and just plunder, because you have so incensed the the besieging army because of all the terribleness they had to endure for months, sometimes years, that they're going to take it out on the city, on everyone in the city. So if you can walk that razor's edge, then maybe you can reach a point where, if it comes to it, you can get a negotiated settlement that will be held to. Because sometimes, if a city fell, they would surrender with a negotiation of, we pay a ransom, or you let us leave under arms so we can protect ourselves, something like that. And that's what the mercenary is saying here. And it's another mark against Elayne in my book, because she doesn't understand. She almost never seems to understand the trade-offs. There are no solutions, there are only trade-offs, and that's my biggest frustration with Elayne's storyline in the second half of the series, is that there are never any trade-offs for her, or she never sees the trade-off. She never feels the consequences. She never acknowledges the the negative things that she brought about, unless it is personal. And I think that's a real mark against her character, that uh as much as she talks about caring about her people, you don't actually see that in the way she reacts to negative consequences. Where she is the most kind of repentant is when she does something that puts Nynaeve or Egwene or Avienda uh, or in danger. So the most obvious example is against the Golem, when she genuinely apologizes to Matt that
Yeah, but
this
that was after
terribleness.
the fact.
Exactly.
And she's in the midst right now. So we still don't get an arc there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I'm not going to be as nice as you. It's downright
Okay.
evil.
Mm.
Shooting these people in the back when they're running from the battlefield. Yeah, we've seen it in history, we've seen it in the past, and those were not good people. Yeah, you can just every evil person justifies their act. Well,
Mm-hmm.
he would have come back tomorrow and fought me. It's still evil. You won the day.
And she knows full well because we see it that very few of the people who are in the besieging army are true followers of what's her face, whoever's I can't remember the name of uh the woman leading the main the you know the
Aramelia?
Aramilia as
Yeah, yeah.
the opposing claimant, that these are conscripts, levies, and mercenaries for the most part. So, and she knows that what this really is a war of maneuver. She is trying to, it's a political war primarily, and she is trying to outmaneuver Aramilla into a position where she is forced to concede. This isn't a war of conquest. She knows that. She explains that to Avienda and Nynaeve, that there are certain reasons and certain ways that she can't make this a total war in the way that Avienda would expect or want to, of why don't you do this or why don't you do that? Well, I have to balance the fact that, oh, you damn squirrel, get out of my garden. I need a gun. Anyway, I have to balance the fact that when this is done, I have to rule these people, all of these people, and this directly flies in the face of that. Um, and I think you make a good point that, and it's because she's acting emotionally here. She's angry. She's lashing out.
Oh,
That's wrong.
there's logic to it.
Sure, but it's a very cold and
It's a very
yeah.
cold and psychopathic logic.
Mhm.
That's not another human being on the other end. That's your
It's a widget.
enemy.
That's a
Yeah,
widget.
that's a
We're
widget.
just balancing the scales here, and I want you to take a widget out from that side of the scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Um,
And for those that watch
geez.
our political discussions, you'll at least see I'm consistent here. So,
Um, the only other thing to really come out of this chapter that I like is Charles Guybon, my queen, the armsman, the actual guardsman, um, who brings in a whole bunch of guards that were found by one of the kin out doing stuff, and brings in all these guards. You have another great, just very minor character, but as soon as he shows up, he's fully formed. He's fully formed in Jordan's mind, so he's able to write for you, so that you also can see this fully formed human being. And he really stands out, and he is he is absolutely the only good part to me of this of Elayne's storyline through this book is Charles Gaibon, um, who seems to be heavily based on an actual English lord or knight. I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name, but anyway, um, and because uh, even Brigitte starts to get an. It's not that she starts to get annoying, but even she can't salvage Elayne's storyline because, as you said, she's just saying the same thing over and over, and Elayne just keeps ignoring her. So as much as I love her as a character from the very
mhm.
beginning, from when we first meet her, even she can't save this because Elayne really starts to become irredeemable as a character here.
Yeah, and well, we got with Birgitte, one of the things that is the downfall of these chapters, specifically for her character, is she is a supporting character and she will always be that.
Mm-hmm.
And she played best off other main characters, and those other main characters were not Elayne.
Yes.
They were Nynaeve and Matt.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's a very good point. And they are nowhere to be found here.
Yep.
All right.
Although
Um,
I have developed a bigger appreciation of Avienda through this read through
mhm,
because I'm
mhm.
much more culturally sensitive on this read through than I was when I was younger.
Yeah. Um, and there's a lot of subtext with Avienda because she kind of gets the short end of the stick when it comes to Rand's giggity when it comes to Rand's three babes, because obviously Elayne is there really early on. We see a lot of her. We see Min even before we see Elayne, and we see a lot of her. Um, we
Hey,
don't get a ton of
don't
Avienda.
discount your first time though.
Well, this is true. We
She does pop his cherry.
we don't see a ton of her beyond that. And when we first really start to get to know her as a character, it's not even with Rand, it's with Egwene, as they're apprenticing together. So and especially later she kind of disappears. So you don't get as much time, and you don't see she doesn't get as many point of view chapters as the others do. So it's harder to get to know her than it is the others, unless you're picking up on these subtleties. Um,
I wonder if that was because it would have made for a slog because she was so much, had so much difference in culture than us that
mm,
some people would have trouble reading it, and Jordan
that
understood that.
that's a good point. He would have to spend a lot of time explaining things, which would be difficult to do in character, because as we've ranted about, the reason exposition in modern writing, both in on the page and on the screen, suck is because you're lecturing to the audience, and that's boring. You need to have it in world so that the audience just sees it happening. And but the balancing act there is it has to be done in a way that is believable in world, but then still understandable for the audience to infer rather than be told explicitly. And the Aiel are so alien in so many ways culturally that it would be difficult to explain things without coming across as an exposition lecture that doesn't make sense, because obviously if it's in Avienda's head, she's not thinking that, except the times where she's thinking explicitly about the differences between her and the Wetlanders.
Mhm.
That's really the main way that he explains Aiel culture to us.
But you would think she would have learned so much going all the way to Falme,
Mm.
and it's a long way. You think she would have come across every culture along the way.
She didn't go. Oh God,
Okay. Again, I'm the one who brained my damage. You, come on. Don't make
I
me the quick one today.
I hate you so much. Uh, why did you bring that up? Why did you say that name? Okay. Anyway, um, all right. So, um, wet things, giggity. No crap. All right. Um,
Yeah. Ugh.
I don't have any thoughts on this chapter at all, I don't think. Um,
Evading my memory. See, my problem is I reread some of this last weekend, apparently.
I just read it and I don't care. Um, so actually, there is one interesting thing here on page 327. Um, but it's interesting in light of what you talked about with Egwene acting psychopathic, acting evil, demanding that you shoot fleeing people in the back.
Elayne,
Elayne, what did I say?
Egwene.
Oh, okay, same thing. No, that's what
No,
Scott
not
should
even
say. I
close.
don't.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, as bad as Elayne is acting, that she's not Egwene.
so well, but this passage is very Egwene like. This is actually kind of her train of thought as well. I think we've seen before that. Um, so one of the kin come to her, Rian comes to her because they've been working with these uh uh, Soldam and Domine that Rand sent uh from Path of Daggers in his battle with the Sanchin there at the end of Path of Daggers. And one of them has accepted, one of the Soldam has accepted that, yeah, she can see the weaves. But she insists that means she needs to be collared. Well, Elaine's solution to that is fine, send her back to the Sanchin. Let her collar them. And she explains, I can, she said emphatically, lengthening her own stride. She helped hold enough other prisoners that she deserves a taste of it herself, Rianne. But that's not why I mean to send her back. If any of the others wants to stay and learn and make up for what she's done, I certainly won't hand her to the Sanchin. But Light's truth, I hope they all feel like Marley. They'll put in a dom on her, Rianne, but they won't be able to keep secret who she was. Every one-time Soldam I can send back to the Sanshin to call her will be a Matic digging at their roots. A harsh decision, Rian said sadly. Perhaps you might consider thinking on it for a few days. Surely it isn't anything that has to be done immediately. Elayne gritted her teeth, and then, she gets angry and petulant here. That she gets angry and petulant because someone is questioning her authority. But Rianne's not wrong, and not only is she not wrong, she's right, and under her own moral code is really obligated to bring up a contradictory opinion. And if Elayne's still going to do it, fine, she's still going to do it because she's the boss. But she needs to hear contradictory opinions, which is one of her great failings in the latter half as she becomes a ruler. Is she knows she's talked about this in earlier books about being uh, being in a position of authority without being an authoritarian. That's one of the things her mother taught her. And we actually see that very briefly in The Eye of the World when Rand gets brought before Morgase, and we see her contemplating and thinking and asking Elida what her advice is, asking Gareth Brine what his advice is, and then making her ruling. We never see her lashing out in those moments. We never see her being annoyed that someone is saying something other than what she thinks, but we get that with Elayne.
Wouldn't it be nice, as we've mentioned before, if a kind-hearted brother that we saw in books 1, 2, and 3 was there doing his job
Mm-hmm.
and right there by her side at that moment
Mm-hmm.
to give her the voice of reason where she could start to lash out and be like, that's my brother. That would have been nice.
I just had a thought about that too, that we still could have gotten some of the internal struggle, some of the drama that we get from Gawain later, because he goes back to Elayne to do his duty, to help
And
with
then he
what's
could
going
have
on
had the
here.
struggle of his loyalty to Egwene and his loyalty to Elayne
Exactly.
from a perspective of having done his job and being doing his job at the time.
But also he would certainly want, once he got there, he would want to leave because at this point he doesn't know where Egwene is. He doesn't know who she is.
Mhm.
If he goes to Elayne, he would find out that Egwene's my boss.
We could have
Egwene's the
even had a
Amberlin.
we could even had a complete brother sister spat this
Yeah.
whole time because he's trying to get the information from Elayne.
Mm-hmm.
I won't leave, I won't leave, but tell me where she is. I won't leave, I won't
Yep.
leave, but tell me
Yep.
where she is. And she won't tell him. And we could have had that dynamic as well. Uh, it's I think the biggest failing in the Jordan books. It really is
And
because
there's a
he was so good for the first three books. Now,
and it,
there was a comment we missed because Scott commented on an earlier episode,
oh, okay.
and it was about Gawain and Galad because the last episode or
Mm.
the prologue episode we talked about
Yeah, we
Galad
talk about
a
God a
lot,
lot. Yeah.
and he said it seems like they switched characters.
Oh no, we talked about that.
Oh, it showed up as a new notification. Did we talk
That's
about
weird.
that on Saturday?
Maybe he edited the comment or something. But no, we. Oh wait, yeah, that's right. We talked about that Saturday. That's why you have no clue.
Oh,
Yeah,
but I watched
yeah,
it.
I talked about that.
I don't remember mentioning that comment. Oh,
I'm pretty sure it was Saturday, and I know I talked about it because I didn't think that was quite right. I think
I
it
don't think it's a complete
seems
switching of
like, yeah.
character, but I think there's a the way you lean towards one character or other switched.
I think it seems like they're switched simply because we finally get a Galad perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so well written, it makes sense. When we finally get Galwin perspectives, it doesn't make you dislike him any less. It makes you dislike him more. It says because with Galad, if you dislike him or if you're on the fence about him, and then when you actually get inside your head, you go, okay, I understand this guy now. Even earlier, when I thought he was kind of being an obnoxious or a rigid white cloak pull up his butt or whatever, okay, even if you still think he was doing those things, you at least understand it. You understand that he's not Bayer, he's not the caricature Elayne made him out to be. With Godwin, the more you learn about him, the more you realize what a moronic simp he is.
Yeah, and I think that's just because of the direction he went. And
Hmm.
this would also have solved the Brigitte problem because when she's trying to do that job, it becomes a cat fight where
Yes.
Elayne has the ultimate power. So it's
Yeah.
basically the Mean Girls.
Yeah, that's
It's
a good point.
yeah.
And also a random thought that you just gave me is that, so I won't talk about it, but I'll just mention that I brought up Charles Guyban because one of the better scenes in the book comes later, and it's him, and it's a you know, man, you are a badass moment, and that's great. But how much better would that have been if instead of Charles, it was Gawain?
Hmm.
You know, why not, instead of introducing this new guy, introduce Gawain had come down, he had gone to Erengil, he was trying to find his way back, and he was the one leading these guardsmen because they sure as heck would have followed him if the first sword, if the prince shows up, says I'm trying to get, I'm going to get us into Camelin because that's where we belong, that's where we need to do our duty. How much more of a hell yeah moment would that have been? Yet another one in this book if that would have been Gawain who showed up with those 2,000 guardsmen. It's
It
it,
was
it
4,000.
it was a lot. I don't remember.
4,762.
Okay.
Page
Oh,
320.
I think he takes 2,000 with him later in the scene I'm referencing. I think is where I got that number. Anyway, but sadly it's a missed opportunity, and it really makes me wonder. I may have to go digging through things and see if he talked about this at all um, before his death, because we really don't get the Gawain is an obnoxious simp until the next couple of books.
Yeah, but we get that he's not here.
But we get
So
that he's not
yeah,
here.
yeah.
But the point is, and we kind of talked about this when we talked about Gawain in spoilery things previously, of where his storyline ends up, and wondering what did Jordan actually intend? Where was he going with this? And I may have to go back way back to our Lord of, was it Lord of Chaos? Yeah, it's Lord of Chaos where Gawain shows up and meets up with Egwene, and and
Hmm.
and, and we talked about how those are actually really good scenes. Those are great for both of those characters, and it really makes, made us wonder and think out loud about what was it Jordan initially intended with these two, kind of, with these two in what seems like a kind of tragic romance.
Yeah, well, it was a good little two already becoming powerful characters can still have puppy love. And that's something.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a little something.
yeah,
It's the Bill and Melinda Gates story when they started, not the way it ended. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, all right. Let's move on. Oh, da, 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 da. So all right, chapter 15. This is interesting. Uh, that just kind of jumped out at me because there's an interesting contrast here with something that's going to happen with Egwene later. Because part of, again, just a little thing, he doesn't dwell on it too long, which is good. Is one of the ways the Dark One's essence of entropy is influencing the world is it is warping reality. And I think I think probably the more scientific, if you can call it that, way of thinking about this, I think what is probably happening, to your point about the way the Dark One kind of, the way the dream world connects everything, is I think what is happening here is that different alternate realities are merging here. That's why the palace is changing. That's why buildings are changing, is because there's a merging of the portal stone worlds and the real world. And so this is how the palace, this is the palace architecture in some alternate reality,
Hmm.
and that they've merged or they've switched, and so now, you know hallways go nowhere or rooms aren't where they're supposed to be. Is what I think is is what I suspect is in Jordan's head when he's writing this, of how he, because he's talked about how he doesn't explain all the rules of the world, but he has them. He knows them. He knows how, what the weave is, how it works, the dream world, how the power works, what that is. So he's got these kind of laws of physics in his head, even if he doesn't explain them all outright. And I suspect that's
Well, and
kind of
as a
how he
physicist,
was
you know
thinking.
he had to have
Yeah.
dabbled in string theory. So it,
Yeah.
if we got a kind of I hate to use the word because string theorists really don't use it either, multiverse
Hmm.
kind
Hmm.
of thing going on
All right. So
with the
anyway,
hub
but
being the dream world.
that's the real important part as far as the series is concerned. But we see more of Elayne's character here as she gets pissy about this, about getting turned around and things not being right, and she's taking it personally, and she's getting mad, and like there's almost a social anxiety disorder element here of thinking that someone's going to say something, someone's going to think less of her or besmirch her because she doesn't know her own way around her own palace, and so she kind of gets irrationally angry here, which is going to be in sharp contrast with the way Egwene handles it later. But other than that, I don't care. um Yeah, and then the only other thing in this chapter that is of real importance is, credit where it's due. We do get a very nice moment uh with uh with Elayne when Avienda is told she has to leave. That she has to go back to resume and finish her training as an apprentice. And there's a genuine humanness there that is sadly lost too often in Elayne's story arc here. Um And then we get her talking to the mercenaries, blah 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 blah. Um, do I care about any of this?
Wait, what are they arguing about? Who's got toe to who? I forgot.
Where?
Page 343. What did Avienda do?
Whew. Uh, let's see.
Oh, they were looking at the Turin Grail.
Yes, she channels. She discovers she has this talent, this somewhat weird and specific talent of being able to figure out what Tarangreal are, and then it appears that once as this talent starts to manifest and grow a little bit, she's actually able to instinctively figure out how to activate them. And so, but then she freaks out because this is actually interesting that you bring this up because this goes along with my rant of Elayne and her uh, egotistical invincibility. That she is certain that, and Brigitte kind of sets her down a couple of times. I don't remember exactly where. But Elayne never takes it to heart of well, men had a viewing that my babes were going to be born, we're going to be born and born healthy. So that means I can do whatever the hell I want because the pattern is set. And Brigitte makes the point that doesn't mean you can finish your gestation and be catatonic. You get knocked into a coma, and we could
Mm-hmm.
keep you and the babes alive until they come to term. And she never actually learns that lesson and applies it. And that's what that's what Avienda is doing here. She actually has more respect and restraint than Elayne does because no, something could have happened. Whether or not it altered the pattern that men viewed, or whether it was something tragic, but the babes were still able to be born. You never know what's going to happen when you channel into a terangreal. If you don't know how it works, you don't do it right. It could end up disastrous, and that's why Avienda feels she has toe because she didn't think before she acted, and if she was wrong in her instinct, she could have hurt Elayne and the babies, and that's why she has toe. But Elayne it doesn't matter. I'm invincible. No, dummy.
And you're
That's
not.
You are not, and it's a great moment for Avienda's character and a great light on what the problem with Elayne's character is here.
Well, and not only that, we talked about the battles earlier. Just because you're not going to die doesn't mean you don't lose an eye or an arm or
Yeah, yeah. Then
become disfigured for the rest of your life with flames in the face or something. You know?
good luck relearning how to channel, because it would be like Rand having to relearn how to use the sword. Because we've seen that when a woman or a man learns to channel, that's the way they always have to do that weave, because it becomes ingrained, it becomes a part of them. So if you're using hand motions and you don't have an arm, are you going to be able to channel, or are you going to be able to channel as effectively at least? Yeah. Bottom line, she's a dummy, and it's annoying. Um, the All right, so the the whole chat with the mercenaries, I don't really care about. It's To me, that's one of those things that goes on too long, and it's just kind of a repeat of stuff we've already seen, because we've already seen her dealing with the mercenaries. So it seemed repetitive to me and unnecessary. But anyway, um, so we do get a little bit of the politics and the espionage going on here with the spy that she has in Aramilla's um, camp, and then we meet Samuel Hark, a remarkably successful cut purse. I do actually like this scene, because this is again another very small but fully formed character who gives us a nice moment of levity in this slog of Elayne's chapter of. I love that he has an excuse for everything, and the excuses become more and more absurd as they kind of pin him down, and show that he is unmistakably guilty.
Hmm.
Um, and then they're going to set him to follow Malar. Anyway, and then we get another Elayne chapter. Good Lord, all when are we done with this? Um, so I actually do like there's one interesting exchange here. So page 367, Denny, the leader of her female bodyguard, um, let's see. Um, all right, so they're talking about the palace being changed, and the weirdness, and 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 Elayne asks, "Does this frighten you, Denny?" She asked. "I'll admit it does me." "No more than needful, my lady," the blocky woman answered without stopping her careful scan of what lay ahead. Um, Her voice was placid and as matter of fact as her face. "One time, a big wagon man named Eldrin Hackley came near breaking my neck. Not usually a rough man, but he was drunk beyond drunk that night. I couldn't get the angle right, and my cudgel seemed to bounce off his skull without making a dent. That frightened me more because I knew certain sure I was about to die. This is just maybe, and any day you wake up, maybe you die." Um, let's see. And then we get some Dylan and the obnoxious kids. Uh, oh, and then we get so mildly interesting. Uh, we get this someone has been killing off the kin and leaving clues that were supposed to be found, but they were too dense to find them or to recognize what they were. Um, So someone was trying to be subtle, but not subtle enough that it wasn't recognized that there's a murderer, to try and unweave dissent, and weaken Elayne. And then uh, Rand Corley is the latest victim, and that is actually a good moment because we've seen her for a while, and she's a very likable side character.
Well, and we just had
Um,
a moment with Elayne
mhm,
just a couple pages ago, really.
yeah. Um,
Where are you at?
I'm on page 378.
Okay.
Yeah, so 377, 378 is when it's finally discovered. Oh, uh, let's see. Yeah, so halfway down 378, Van Dien's talking. When Moraine went to the tower, she hid this doll outside because she had heard that everything would be burned always. She had a quirk though. Wherever she stopped for a time, she hid the doll again. Do not ask me why, but she would not have run away without it. So Moraine didn't run away. She was murdered and disposed of. The others too, you think? All of them. Van Dien nodded. I very much fear so. I expect clues were left among the things left behind. Treasure keepsakes like this doll, a favorite piece of jewelry. The murderer wanted us to think she was being clever at hiding her crimes, but not clever enough. Only we weren't clever enough to find those clues, so she decided to become more blatant. Um, I think we're safe in assuming this is the Black Ajah trying to either weaken Elayne or lure her out or something. Is that what we're assuming is going on here?
Yeah, probably.
And we already know there is a black amongst them because of I just brain farted on Van Dien's sister's name. Um
Adelaide.
Adelaide, yeah. Uh
But we also have Falion, one of the FAL.
and yeah, and we
Yeah.
know she's there.
She's in
Yeah.
town and Melar could be helping her.
And
So
yeah, Malar is working with that cell of Black Ajah. Um and then we get a scene with Emilia, which is it's fine. I actually would, this is another reason why I feel like Elayne is a slog because we could have done with less Elayne, and these scenes kind of cutting to the besieging army gives us more insight into what's going on and in a different way that breaks it up and makes it more interesting. So I do like the break there. All right. Big sigh. Chapter 18. We're on to Rand. Finally done. We can talk about that next time. We'll have several Rand chapters, and then I think we get into Egwene, so we'll see how long they take us of if we do both of them, uh, or just the Rand stuff. All right. Thankfully, we are done
well, we
with the
almost made
Elayne
100
slog.
pages. So
Yeah. Um. So, did we have spoilers?
uh let's see. We talked about any possible people other than Massima that could have been the shooter or the
Yeah.
hirer of the shooters. Uh you said something about a you made a oh, I think you explained it though, a comment about Gaibin, but you
Yes.
explained it that it would have been better if it was Gawain.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's and if you go away if you're first time reading. Yeah. So the rescue of Elayne is, I mean, that should have been freaking Galvin.
Hmm.
That, I mean, she's stupidly, selfishly went and got a bunch of people killed and got herself captured, and who's her protector? I mean, yeah, Brigitte is her
Who's
warder,
supposed to be her protector.
exactly, but Gawain literally swore when he was a child with the grown-ups putting his hand on the sword and telling him what to say, to from the moment Elayne was born, to swear that he would protect her. That's his thing. Um, and so it's understandable why he's in a massive funk inside his own head when we finally get back to him later. It's understandable, Unfortunately, it's not compelling, it's not entertaining, and it's just plain frustrating because of how it's written and how he reacts.
See, if this were the show, here's what would happen. I'm going to tell
Oh
you what the
gosh,
show would do here.
please don't.
It would be Matt. Matt would jump in and rescue her and say, "You can thank me later," and then go back to his storyline. I'm a
That,
hero of the horn.
oh geez. That is something that I have noticed more and more as I've been watching crappy modern stuff. Like that was one of the things I noted when I was watching the thing I keep forgetting about, which was Witcher season 3. I keep saying we should talk about it, and then I keep forgetting it exists because it was so banal.
It's so forgettable. I would have to rewatch it
Mhm.
too.
And there's some of this in season 2 as well, which is the contrivances that the person who needs to be at the place at the time is just there. You know, you kind of see some of this uh, in season 2 with why is that person there? How did they get there? Well, they're there because the plot needs them to be there, so they're there.
Mhm.
And um, kind of the alternate histories, if you will, that we've talked about with with the books and how things might have, could have, should have been better. And the big one is the boys finally meeting back up and how much of a letdown Matt and Perrin finally reuniting is. But you can see how it got to where it was because the narrative just started to expand so much, and Jordan is clearly working to get them back together. They're headed in the same direction eventually here in a second. So they're headed in the same direction. So you know they're going to meet up, but it's going to be logical on purpose for a reason because they are both for their own reasons headed to the same place. So they are going to meet up. It's not just, oh, look, and this is one of my problems with the Sanderson books, and I don't know how much of this is time constraints and the notes or if it's just his style. That one of the problems I have with those books is there are a few times where there are contrivances. It's, oh, this person is here because they need to be here. And there's a little bit of an explanation. So it's not a complete contrivance, but it is convenient.
Any suspects in the shooting?
Well, the only reason I said that is because to me there's a real similarity here between this scene and what happened several books ago to Rand in Camelin.
Hmm.
When he thought it was White Cloaks and they were White Cloaks, but it was Padden Fane. It was Padden Fane's White Cloaks. So there's a real similarity here, but
Okay,
I don't think
so
Fane
oh,
is
wait.
anywhere close to
Oh, hold
Perrin
no,
or
hold on,
cares.
hold on, hold on. There's a passage in there
Ooh.
that makes you. I actually thought, oh, I wonder if they're bringing up Pat and Fane.
Hmm.
Oh goodness. After that, where is that scene? Uh, Mishima, the second in command, is talking about all the things that are happening, and the Banner General says, "Quit thinking about those things. Those are just stupid." And one of them was people bloating bodies being found. The same thing that happens when Patton Fane cuts somebody with his dagger.
Mm, mhm.
It's right before the Beatles, I think.
Okay, it wasn't. All right, so I just looked something up. Okay. Where are we? Manufactory.
Okay. It's page 296. Mishima frowned at him. Fellow shouldn't be in here if he's ill. What if it's catching? You hear about all sorts of strange sicknesses these days. Man's hail at sunrise, by sunfall he's a corpse, and swollen to half again his size.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
And my first thought when I read that, I was like, that sounds like when Pat and Fane cut
Yeah,
somebody. So
yeah.
we might have the
And
same culprit.
do we know where he is? Because he disappears for a good chunk of time from when we saw him in Winter's Heart is when we last saw him. When he runs into Rand and they try and kill each other. And then I think he disappears till pretty much the final book. So I don't think we know where he is or what he's up to. But that would explain. I think we hypothesized this about the Darkhound pack.
Mhm.
Who are they looking for?
They could be looking for Pat and Fane.
And I speculated that maybe it's Pat and Fane, and we weren't so sure about that because at the time we thought, well, wait, isn't he in Farmatting? How did he get over here? What are the Darkhounds
Yeah,
doing over here?
that's the last time we saw him was Farmotting.
But but yeah, it could be that
Making
he's
bloated
here for
bodies
some
is
reason.
is the last time we saw
Yeah,
him. Yeah.
yeah. So on another note, I did look up. It wasn't Suroth. It was we saw Rhonda Makura in Tawan's entourage
Oh.
in Winter's Heart, and it's kind of it's a very brief thing, but she becomes part of Tawan's entourage. That's how she gets insinuates herself into the Sanchin and and shares the secret of Forkroot with them because of her hatred of Aes Sedai now.
Another one that's for spoilers I put was back to the fork route. When we get the old high fives after the game, good game, good game, good game after the last battle, do we get any follow up on the worry of fork route in the Shanshin uh,
No, we don't
repertoire?
really get any follow up of anything. It's we get a lot of setup of what might come to pass after the last battle um, between the kind of the coalition nations and the Sanchin of what's going to happen there, and we get so there's a lot you can speculate about, but we can't know, which I think was the whole point uh, of the perhaps maybe sequel that he contemplated doing about Matt because I think the whole point of that was probably going to be to explain what happens to the Sanchin and how, if at all, are the nations of Randland able to coexist with the Sanchin and their very abhorrent practice of collaring women.
Well, yeah, not only that, but they have a means to trap them easily.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's all I had.
All right, so back to Rand next time. Uh, that'll be Friday, Wednesday. I had a thought and I've completely lost it, so maybe I'll remember what it is by then.
What you texted me about last night?
Yes, that was one of them. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's that, and what else is there? A reporter for the Daily Wire was arrested for Jan 6 stuff, even though all he was doing was standing outside reporting on it. So there's that. Uh, and that's a whole subject on itself of the people that are being
All
arrested for
right.
that kind
Well,
of stuff.
that'll let me get historically dorky and talk about World War One.
Oh, yay. Huzzah. All right. Anything else?
That's all I got. We'll see y'all next time.
All right. See you next time.